think it's helpful to start this talk by referring to the document that came out of the Cape Town Congress in 2010, where it says in the foreword that really the challenge we need to take in, all of us, is the challenge to bear witness to Jesus Christ and all his teaching. And that is a three-dimensional challenge according to the Cape Town Commitment. It's both related to every nation. This is very much, reminiscent of the Great Commission in the New Testament. So bear witness to Jesus Christ and all his teaching in every nation, in every sphere of society. That is the holistic discipleship, whole life discipleship, and in the realm of ideas. My home setting, where I live, is a university college setting where I work in the southern part of Norway. And our history is very much linked to Christian media ministries, because the roots of our college is actually very much connected to Transworld Radio. Some of you may be familiar with Transworld Radio, which is a global ministry that has really served very faithfully in so many years, communicating the gospel in many parts of the world. So this is one of the 3 or 4 or 5 key media global evangelical agents today. So for me it is important to ask, how can we use media in Christian media ministries? Let's start with the traditional media, if there ever is anything like that in today's media world. There are so many different things that we could go into, but let's just touch on some of them. Print media, a whole important area, and you have the whole area of publishing, the whole area of magazines, the whole area of book publishing, of course. And today, it's needless to say, I suppose, that the new digital technologies present new challenges and new opportunities for that whole world. But thinking of it historically, publishing, print media has played a very significant role in the history of the church ever since Gutenberg and the Reformation. Radio. Well, radio was definitely appropriated and used by Christian ministries globally and locally and nationally very early on. We've already mentioned Transworld Radio, which is one of the key broadcasters. Then it's FEBC and FEBA, and it's of course the Voice of Anders, HCJB. And all those represent long histories, esteemed ministries that have done a lot to spread the gospel all over the world. Television is also an important area, and there are a number of ministries who have entered television many years ago, as I suppose many of you are aware of. One of the more recent histories is almost like a miracle story when you think of it, and that's the whole history of Sat7 in the Middle East, which now has a very significant ministry in I think it is 6 or 7 different channels, reaching effectively millions of people with the Christian message in appropriate shapes and forms, never themselves aligning themselves with political issues, but opening up the arena. So in terms of television, it's interesting to note, by the way, since the picture here is picturing some charming elderly people, that I don't know if you know the statistics, but I know in UK, and I suppose that's true also in Scandinavia and other places in Europe, the level of TV viewing is very high among the elderly people. And I think that's one sign of loneliness. People don't have access often to networks, social networks. So that's a real issue, I think, that we need to engage with. But it's also a real opportunity wherever there is an opportunity to have a Christian broadcasting or television program on. In parenthesis, that age group, actually the early retirement age group, is the one where movie going increases, I think, to a very large extent, at least according to statistics I saw related to UK. That's very fascinating that this early retirement group, on the picture it's older retirement, but early retirement is actually a very significant group in terms of media usage. Of course, in today's world, there are a number of implications of new media. And by new media, we definitely mean the social media, the whole area of new media technology and challenges. And where to start? It's so much going on right now in terms of the web constituting the basis, internet technology, and moving from what is called Web 1.0 to Web 2.0, and then going further than that to the interactivity that is very important in today's media channels, the new media technology. Then, of course, all kinds of arenas like Facebook. Someone has called Facebook one of the largest countries in the world. And it's fascinating to ask the question, we talked about bearing witness to Jesus Christ in every nation. We are then thinking about geographical borders. But today, the world is also defined by digital borders and boundaries. Have you ever heard anyone speaking on that issue when it comes to missiology and mission? Do we reach out to the digital worlds of today? I think that's an area, an issue of increasing significance and importance. And it's important to realize that the whole world that we encounter is characterized by digitalization. It's a changing world where digital technology changing so much. I mentioned Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and so on and so on and so on. They are all very important arenas, and I don't think we have explored the significance of that sufficiently yet. One dimension of the media is the democratization of one dimension of the new developments of the media is the democratization of the media. That means that each one of us with new technology becomes media producers. And that's a totally new dimension. Previously, the newspapers and the radio television channels in a country had a monopoly in this whole area. But nowadays, the whole blogosphere has arrived. Whatever color of the blogs, as they say, whether it's pink or red or black, as they sometimes call them. It's the whole democratization of the media raises so many questions, and I don't think that we have explored those. One dimension is every church can be a media ministry. Have you ever thought about that? Symbolized here by Rick Warren. If you think of Saddleback Church just as a case, as an interesting case, there are so many things produced by such a mega church in terms of media content that it almost becomes like a full media ministry. So every church is becoming a media ministry. Every church, through its internet presence, through its websites, through its podcasting, through its through the plenary sessions or the services, the meetings, where definitely technology plays a very significant place if you think of it. Just think about our plenary sessions here at the forum. They definitely are characterized by technology to a certain extent. So every church can be a media ministry. Or every church is becoming a media outlet. And that relates, of course, to every, not just church, but every Christian organization, every Christian institution. And this is hasn't been easy for the last 10 years now, when this has sort of increasingly become the case for the traditional players in this field. You know, that classical Christian broadcasters almost feel that they are in competition with the new players. So I think it's a need to develop a partnership here between the old and the new players in this whole field, when you think of it. And I think it's not incorrect to say that this is an area that has not been explored. What does it mean that every church becomes a media ministry, a media outlet? But it doesn't, that's not the final question. It's also that any Christian can become or be a media ministry with the use of social media. That's part of the democratization of the media. That's a very fascinating part. And it means that really, if we take that seriously, we need to equip the people of God to make a difference. We need to equip the people of God to make a difference in this area. By using social media in a way that it's natural but also intentional. That is, with integrity, but also with creativity. That is with effectiveness, but also with gentleness. Every Christian can be a media ministry. The Lausanne movement has arranged 3 conferences or 3 large congresses, one in Lausanne in 74, one in Manila in 89, and one in Cape Town in 2010. And the document that came out of the Manila Congress in 1989 is called the Manila Manifesto. And it has a very significant section on the priesthood of all believers, saying that we as Christians, we have, hopefully as evangelical Christians, hopefully emphasized the priesthood of all believers. We are all equal before God. There is no one between us and God. We have immediate access through belief in Jesus Christ as our Savior. Immediate access. There is no priest in between. But the priesthood of all believers has a real logical and inevitable implication, and that is the ministry of all believers. That means that we all have a ministry. And it's fascinating for me to link a theological concept here and a technological development. You know, the theological concept being the ministry of all believers, and the technological development being the democratization of the media. Do you see the potential of that? It's immense. I don't think we have explored that to its fullness. What does it mean that any and every Christian is actually being a potential media producer, a potential media communicator? You know, through mobile technology, through web technology, through the combination of different software programs and new technologies, of course, we can produce so much ourselves. That doesn't mean that we have a huge following. It can become very fragmented, very much sort of only within our own circles. But I do think this is worth exploring. Using media effectively. Well, in view of this, media is indispensable in today's world in terms of spreading the gospel, in terms of bearing witness to Jesus Christ. And I think it's just important to highlight some of the dimensions here. And I've deliberately kept some of these things in a global context, because this is not just, a dimension for us in the West. We need to realize that technology is changing the world. That the way technology changes in Africa is dramatically significant right now. And we could have gone into the details about that. How, on the one hand, mobile technology is making a huge impact in Africa right now. And on the other hand, the introduction of broadband technology as well. We could go to some place like India, where the whole introduction of broadband, the huge idea or the government concept of introducing broadband to any and every village in the whole of India is quite a project, if you ask me. And what does that mean for using media effectively? Well, it means that gradually there are platforms there technologically. We need to think about not just about using it, we also need to think about reflecting on the implications of it. I touched that on a focal talk two days ago about the importance of thinking critically about technological developments, about creating media resources for media awareness, for critique, for engaging both with technological, how technology changes and influences our everyday life, but also how media messages influences. So I'm now coming from another angle, asking how can we use this? Yes, we need to think critically about all this, but it's there. It's gradually there. And how to use it? In terms of evangelism, there are so many new opportunities. Being able to link people, being able to reach to people who are either unreached or unengaged, to use the concepts in the Cape Town Commitment, either unreached or unengaged. So media is in a very critical thing in terms of evangelism. In terms of church planting, it could be interesting to explore that, some of these things maybe in the Q&A session. But I think also it's not just about reaching out, presenting the gospel, but it's also about planting the seeds for new churches. And how, for example, do we use social media? Well, at least in the youth culture of today, the use of social media is highly significant. People dialogue with each other through Facebook, for example, in many countries. Even someone like myself working in a university college context find that the easy way to reach people is not through emails, but through Facebook, which is fascinating. And I think the same kind of thing needs to be thought through in terms of church planting. We could cover Bible teaching as well. It's really an area where we need to explore and to think about how to use the creative possibilities, how to engage with Scripture in a way that is richer, more comprehensive through the possibilities given us through the media. We could think about what was the topic, one of the plenary sessions, the evening sessions there, about the disciple making. Really an area where we need to ask, which role does media play in that area? And then finally, integral mission, holistic mission, which is, the whole mission that God has given us, with evangelism being the central part of it, and it flows out of the gospel, the commitment for the whole world, for the whole of humanity, for every need, for the whole of our world. And of course, media is critically important, relating, for example, to issues of persecution, to issues of freedom of religion, to issues of freedom of conscience, or to justice issues. Of course, media is important. And we need to use that purposefully, we need to use it intentionally, we need to use it creatively. And I think we need to encourage Christian leaders, Christian teachers, Christian pastors to be able to use media, or to encourage others to help them to use media in a way that really fulfills the whole calling to bear witness to Jesus Christ and all His teaching in every nation, in every sphere of society, and in the realm of ideas.